What's happening, sports fans? Happy Monday to you all. Appreciate everybody who is tuning in tonight, or more than likely tomorrow morning, as this is an extra late version of the Tampa Bay podcast for a number of reasons. Mondays are always a little bit crazy. Had a very nice couple over for dinner tonight, so extra late getting things going, but that's okay. As I've talked about before, this is not a podcast that is meant to be too in-depth as it pertains to the X's and O's of every single thing that happens in sports. Have plenty to keep us busy with Tampa Bay sports. That is certainly the case tonight. And as someone who's been unplugged from sports for the last 3 to 4 hours at least, it will be interesting me to see what is getting fired at me as I've fired up the X app and am hit with a number of things. First and foremost, what we'll talk about more as the week goes on, Robo Bowl is back for the USF game this Friday. Friday football is fantastic when your team is good. You're not playing Fridays because no one wants to see you. It was a planned Friday. It's a national television game. Fantastic. In addition to that, it will be our first kind of non-traditional week of just Monday through Friday, late half-hour podcast. We will have our traditional show getting posted very late at night, as this one will be Monday through Thursday. I hope Thursday evening to be able to record and have ready for Friday morning a chat with a friend of mine, Robert Stieg, who covers the Bulls with the Bay Area Examiner, a very fine USF podcast that I thoroughly recommend. I'm sure if you are listening to this, you very likely know who they are. I recommend, if you have not heard of them and you are a fan or even interested in supporting USF, you follow them. They cover the team truly better than anybody. And USF as an athletics entity as well, not just football, basketball, Olympic sports, you name it. Well worth the listen. Robert Stieg is a part of their team, and I'm going to chat with him Thursday night, and we'll hopefully be able to post Friday morning ahead of USF's game versus Charlotte Friday night. Some USF Bulls discussion. So tonight we will chat a little bit about the Bucs win, some general Tampa Bay sports. Stu Sternberg penned a long letter that I have actually not read yet. I wanted to read that tonight and talk about that tonight. We'll take a look at that. But USF heavy the rest of the week, especially Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow we will take a look at recapping our bets from the weekend. I think we finished right around 500 between at Bets by Chase and myself on the normally Tampa 2, this week Tampa 1 +1. That will come up tomorrow. Tonight we will start with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which if you are a Bucs fan, I have not gotten to chat with any of my Bucs friends since the game versus Philly. For me personally, I went through somewhat of a roller coaster of emotions in that game with the hideous start and the challenges early on. It was a great reminder of how much I cannot stand Philly. Nick Sirianni on the sideline, and he has to be one of those guys that if he's your coach, you'll love him. I was just praying that, especially when he started running his mouth to Baker, which ultimately turned the game, as the highlights are playing in front of me right now, 24-6 with 10 minutes in the third. As we get into it here, it'll be a great reminder of, I think, some real optimism Bucs fans can have coming out of that game. But what's the right word to use on this podcast where I don't want to use anything that's out of line? What a tool. I think that does not have the punch that I want it to. Just annoying. Very annoying. But if you listened to this podcast last week, I did have concern about this game and really did not think the Bucs were going to win. Got the over, which, again, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But my general thought process was the Bucs have taken unserious teams through their 3-0 record. They had taken unserious teams unseriously. And they beat them all. They beat the Falcons, they beat the Texans, they beat the Jets. My gut said they were not going to be able to just turn that on against this Eagles team that I am someone who, again, if you've listened, I will tell you every time I say something ridiculous and wrong. I've listened to most of the podcasts I've recorded just to see what it sounds like. The number of ridiculous things I've said Bucks when I mean Bulls. I have said all kinds of stupid stuff, and there's plenty of that I will absolutely embrace and acknowledge. So when I say that I was right about something, I am not the guy that bangs the drum about being right. But what I did say was that I thought the Bucs would not be able to just flip the switch for 4 quarters against this Eagles team. Granted, an Eagles team that I don't think is the world beater that a lot of people think they are. I think that's exactly what we saw, that the Bucs came out at home and went through the motions a little bit. And when you go through the motions against a team that is much more serious than the previous 3 that you faced, you're going to get punts blocked. And you're going to get beat on things that you should not get beat on. But what we saw, which to me is super encouraging about this weekend, the Bucs played, in my mind, a C-plus game. If you evaluate everything they did from the first second that ticked off the clock to the last second, C-plus. You can argue that each half was very different than the other. They played a C-plus game, and they almost beat what is, I would say unanimously, the best team in the NFL. And that should give Bucs fans a lot to be excited about. This past weekend, even though it went about exactly how I thought it would, it showed me more than I expected to learn about the Bucs. I think the Bucs are legit. They did all that, not playing their best game, and missing a lot of pieces. We are still missing and may continue to miss for quite a while. It's not like these guys will all be back next week. Key members of our offensive line, our best wide receiver. It was huge to get Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin back. Chris Godwin looked like he was at about 60 or 70% of what he normally would be. Dropped a couple that he doesn't normally drop. You know what? That's going to happen. I was actually pleasantly surprised how involved he was and how good he looked for the most part. Baker, I thought, certainly settled down late. Didn't have his best game. Late in that game, when it had really turned into a ball game, the interception he threw in the end zone, my first thought was, come on, what are you thinking? But I very quickly became of the mindset that, you know what, that's what Baker does, that gamer mentality, that shot taker that gets us back in these games from down 24-6 to being in a one-score game. There's going to be some of those picks that are just, and also no one on the broadcast said it, that interception was deflected at the line. Now, I don't know if it was going to be complete if it was not deflected, but the defensive lineman got his paw up and deflected that football. Aside from the point, and it goes back to what I've said about Baker. Tom Brady, great quarterback, love to have him, got us a Super Bowl. Baker has got some dog in him. It just makes you feel good. When you're in a game like that, he is not quitting. That team is never quitting on a football game, and it was fun to see that on display against the Eagles. Now, it is nauseating to lose to that team at home, and there was way too much green and Ray J. I will not beat that horse to death because everyone else does already. It sucks. You don't like losing to that team. But you know what? When we've played that team in the last 5-10 years when it's mattered, we have their number. And the heat got to the Eagles, and I'm sure they'll point to that as Well, that's what happened. The heat got to us, but we, bit down on the bullet and got through it. If you ask me, that game's going to stick with them a little bit more than they might let on. I think they, like much of the general public, viewed themselves as one of the premier teams, and they are one of the premier teams, but as a team that didn't have anything to worry about, and in week 4, they now know they have something to worry about, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knows? I would not be surprised if these two teams played each other again. Home field would mean a lot in a game like that. Home field has not necessarily mattered in the past in that matchup between the Bucs and Eagles when it gets to the postseason. The one thing the Bucs have going for them, much easier conference schedule, and we'll talk about that a little bit as the NFC South looks to be as discombobulated and relatively worthless as any conference maybe ever has. But all in all, disappointed to lose. You feel good about the team. Those Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave us something to be happy about. Now, what is a little bit concerning to me is this is the start of a very challenging 4-game stretch, and you could say a 5-game stretch if you want to count the Saints at the end of it, but the Bucs did what they needed to do in their first 3. Cannot emphasize enough. Another thing we've talked about, how big that win versus the Jets was. A game that really could have gone either way. The Bucs bear down, get it, and then you lose a tight one with the Eagles. Now you're going on the road to a Seattle team that seems to have gotten their act together. Seahawks 3-1 with Sam Darnold at the helm, coming off a win versus the Cardinals. They also killed the Saints, handily defeated the Steelers. Their only loss so far this season, Week 1 to the 49ers. That game was at home for Seattle, but a tough challenge for the Bucs nevertheless. Right now, Seahawks 3.5-point favorites over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So things are not going to be easy. Following week, 49ers at Raymond James Stadium, and then a very tough game on Monday night. The Bucs travel to Detroit to take on the Lions. But this weekend, it'll be a 4:05 kick versus the Seahawks. And the Bucs will have their hands full, especially, a lot of screenshots on Twitter, a lot of highlights. The Eagles get away with a lot of pass interference. They're a physical team. They get away with it because they're also very good. Like, that secondary is legit. That defense is legit. The Bucs are probably banged up coming out of that game versus the Eagles, and that is really what concerns me the most. Against the Seahawks team, we're on the road. We're probably close to even. Bucs maybe a little bit better position to position, but they've got to be tired. And then you mix in that long flight. This is one where my first thought on a Monday, seeing that 3.5-point line, I like the Bucs to cover, but I don't know. I think this will be a 1 or 2 point game. We'll see what happens. That is the Bucs recap. We'll take a quick look. I did not even see the finals yet of the games tonight. If I can get here on ESPN to the NFL, the Dolphins won. That I kind of felt coming. They beat the Jets 27-21, although it looks like Tyreek Hill injured. Oh my goodness, Denver beats Cincinnati 28-3. Boy, that is a bad Bengals team right now. Killed by Minnesota last week. Denver gets them this week. Some notable scores from Sunday. Packers-Cowboys 40-40 tie on Sunday night. Atlanta comes into a win versus Washington. That is a Washington team with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, but the Falcons do beat them at home 34-27. New Orleans gets beat 31-19 by Buffalo. And Carolina just killed by New England 42-13. Of course, Carolina comes off a huge one over the Falcons and then just gets smoked on the road This division, the Bucs, it is always a little bit uncomfortable when you have a team like the Saints. It just always seems to play their best football against you. After the Bucs get that win versus Atlanta, at Atlanta already, they should go 6-0 against this division. These just seem to be unserious football teams. We will hope that continues. I don't think the Lightning were in action tonight. Lightning, the most electric team in the NHL preseason, undefeated. And they've had some roster cuts. This is one we'll look at a little bit more closely tomorrow or Wednesday. But that's fun. Always exciting to be able to not lose. NHL app is acting kind of funky here. Let's see if I can get the teams. There's teams. Tampa Bay Lightning schedule. And yes, they play the Florida Panthers. Interesting. Preseason tomorrow night. That will be an away game. But yes, they are 4-0. And the offense opened up a little bit over the weekend. 6-5 win over Carolina. 4-1 win over Nashville. We'll talk some more hockey later in the week. Want to check the show notes here, and oh boy, we talked about calling out for stupid things said, stupid predictions made. Not only a stupid prediction, but one that is just out of character for me. Giving credence to Central Florida. I said that I thought people were being unfair to them, including friends of mine who like to support them, who went there. I thought they were being too hard on them. The team was undefeated, and I thought had an opportunity versus a Kansas State team that has just been garbage all year to show that, hey, we might not be great, but we're not awful. UCF gets blown out 34-20. Beat 34-20 by a Kansas State team that beat North Dakota by 3, lost to Army and Arizona, and then beat UCF by 2 touchdowns. And I think at one point it was not that close. I apologize. I will never support UCF again. As I mentioned when we got rolling over the weekend, the Rays wrapped up the regular season with a fairly ugly, I believe 13-4 was the final loss to the Toronto Blue Jays. And on the morning of the final game, Rays' outgoing owner, though he will still be with his ownership group retaining 10% of the new ownership group franchise, put out a long goodbye letter that was put out, I believe, all Rays social media channels. And on Twitter, the tweet reads, "For all the fans, players, and community ahead of this season's final game." And I have not read this. We've talked a lot about the Stu Sternberg era on this podcast. I have shared my thoughts, and for anyone who has not heard them, while I do appreciate the on-field product that Stu Sternberg assisted in bringing, I hold the opinion that that is overshadowed fairly significantly by his lack of long-term commitment to the community, and really the most fundamental thing that makes a franchise successful. I think he alienated the community geographically, and that is a huge reason for the lack of attendance, the lack of support when it comes to purchasing tickets at the box office, and the seeming failure from an outsider's perspective of Stu to be able to agree to the, by all accounts, favorable terms that the city of St. Petersburg presented to keep a stadium here long term, backs up the feeling that he was basically giving the finger to Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, and really the Tampa Bay area as a whole for quite some time. I have not yet read the letter he put out. I wanted to read that here tonight, and so we'll take a look as this 2-page letter does start. Dear Rays fans, it has been my joy and a privilege to be the principal owner of the Tampa Bay Rays for the past 2 decades. Together we have experienced a countless number of magical moments both on and off the field. As my time comes to a close and a new ownership group steps forward, I want to thank you for the support you've shown me, our players, each other, and this franchise along our remarkable journey together. I am deeply proud of what we accomplished. Since becoming the Rays before the 2008 season, we have earned the 3rd best record in baseball, made 9 trips to the postseason, and reached the World Series twice, in 2008 and 2020. That track record is extraordinary, and the credit belongs to our players, managers, and staff, both present and past, who embraced a culture of optimism, innovation, ingenuity, collaboration, and resilience. I'll pause right there and say, I agree with every word that has been said so far. And those first 2 paragraphs, that is the good and the things that even people in my position that have the opinions I think have to give credit to, because that is the hardest part of professional sports. And I think it's what really chaps me about what has been failed at. Because what has been failed at in gaining community support by committing to the area you are in is fairly easy, especially when you have done what you just started this letter with. I will continue. Beyond the wins and losses, I take immense pride in how the Rays became part of the fabric of St. Petersburg and the Tampa Bay region. Through the Rays Baseball Foundation and countless hours of service, we've invested tens of millions of dollars into causes that strengthen and bind our community. Our executives and coworkers have served on nonprofit and business boards, and this organization has always stepped up in times of need. Whether rallying after hurricanes, pandemics, or other crises, both big and small. Again, we have made clear in our complaints that there has been a tremendous amount of good done, paid, volunteered, etc. As the letter continues. Baseball is more than a game. I have believed it to be a thread that joins people together, and I'm grateful that the Rays have been able to play that role in this region. I can feel, as I click to the second page of this, the objection starting to rise here from me. Despite our years of effort, we were not able to bring a new ballpark to life. We tried hard, and I truly believed we had found a solution last year. But sometimes circumstances beyond your control intervene, and it will now be up to others to carry that work forward. I will pause again. I am not convinced, and I hope to be able to talk to people that are further in the know than I am over the next year to dissect some of this as the new ownership group presses forward. I am not convinced that there was a tremendous amount of effort to establish a new stadium in the Tampa Bay region by this ownership group. With the acknowledgement that I could be wrong, we'll see. Letter continues. Still, the memories we share are indelible. 2 rides to the World Series, the journey to and the magic of Game 162, Evan Longoria's unforgettable home run, Kevin Kiermaier's spectacular catches, Junior Camanero's 2025 season, and too many other moments to name here. The Rays Hall of Fame has and will continue to commemorate these incredible accomplishments and individuals. Just as lasting are the friendships and connections I've made with our staff, our fans, our players, and the community leaders who share a passion for baseball and the Rays' positive impact on our area. To our players and employees, thank you for helping transform and grow the Rays into an organization our community takes great pride in. To our fans and community partners, thank you for standing with us and making this journey so meaningful. I now step aside as the guy in charge and begin a new journey as a supporter of the organization and as a fan. I thank Matt Silverman for joining me at the very beginning of this voyage, and Brian Auld as well for being there every step of the way. A final thank you to my partners and most importantly, my family. I and we could not have done any and all of this without you. I can now wish the new ownership group every success as they embark on their own journey. Thank you, and go Rays. That, I think, encompasses a lot of how I reflect on my experience as a Rays fan and what I have seen. And I won't say this is putting a bow on it because I do want to really find some insight from others who are maybe closer and share different perspectives. I think Stu Sternberg is a very sharp guy. I think Stu Sternberg and this ownership group did they changed the game of baseball on the field. And I think they had some incredibly smart and talented people, and still do, in the front office on the business side, marketing, sales, etc. I think they did the hardest things pretty well, very well. Reading the tea leaves, they just really didn't want to be in Tampa Bay. And it is hard as a fan from the area to appreciate those other things to the fullest extent when it was being done with the intention to be elsewhere. And I've made the comparison to Rob Higgins and how he speaks about USF being a destination, being at the table. And the Rays, in my mind, were a science experiment. And it was, look at what we have here. Imagine what this could be there. And I'm glad it failed. Because it means that right now, there is still a baseball team in Tampa Bay. I think it'll stay there forever. And I think with a commitment to the area, it is going to be a huge success. That's going to do it for a very late version of the Tampa Bay podcast. Thank you for everyone who is tuning into this. Again, a little shift in the schedule this week. Tomorrow we'll take a look at our bets from over the weekend, recap how we did, where we are. Little encompassing look at college football from the week. Little deeper look into NFL. And then we start looking ahead to the beginning of conference play for USF and the approaching start of the regular season for your Tampa Bay Lightning. Thanks very much for tuning in. Have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.